Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are on episode 24, and we are going to be talking all about amore or a love today. Hi, Jamie. What's happening? What do you have to
Hi.
say?
Hey, Paige. Glad to be here. Always glad to see you. And this is an excellent topic today. Real food recovery. We're coming to you as two recovering processed food addicts with over 100 years in addiction and recovery between us. And we are, as always, food plan neutral and processed food free here on Real Food Recovery. Excited to dig into this episode with you, Paige.
Thank you. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, today is the topic of love, which you might ask, why are we talking about love on a recovery podcast? Which would make sense, but I think it's best just to start talking about love. And through our discussion, I think the answer will reveal itself. In fact, I'm going to start out with a story about, I don't know if any of you have heard the story about the rabbit effect. They were testing these white New Zealand rabbits in these labs. This was several years ago, maybe a few decades ago even. And they were feeding these rabbits, these high fat diets and testing the blood lipids in their bloodstream with the obvious result in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were right, all except for this one group of rabbits that did not, their blood lipids, their cholesterol did not go up, and they could not figure out what in the world was happening with these rabbits. So it was such a startling different response that not only did they not increase in their cholesterol, it either stayed the same or got better, especially compared to all the others. So they had to scrap the whole thing and repeat the entire experiment, which, nobody wants to do.
Right.
They repeated the whole experiment, and guess what? Same exact results with this one
Really?
group of rabbits. And so what they did was they're like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So as they looked into it, they found out that the scientist that was feeding and in charge of this one certain group, she would pick them up and love on them and be kind to them and talk gently to them and caress them.
Wow.
And the ones that were in her care all fared better than the remainder of all the other rabbits in the experiment. It was that profound of a difference. And so that's why they called it the rabbit effect.
Wow.
So they found out that on a cellular level, kindness, love
Mm-hmm.
makes a difference down to a molecular level. There are many health benefits that come from love. So,
Beautiful.
first off, I'm going to ask, what is love? And can you even name one song that isn't about love? Nations go to war over love. There is suffering in the name of love.
Mm-hmm.
Parents have sacrificed everything in the name of love. But can you define it without looking it up? And I did it. I did not cheat and Google, and I'm going to ask Jamie in a minute what she came up with. But here's how I define love: caring more about something else or someone than yourself, having something you want to protect. And again, this was very hard not to look that up. What did you come up? Did you cheat?
No. Nope.
Okay.
I didn't even think about that. Actually, I didn't even think about love is an action for me. Love is the feeling is a result of it, right? So the feeling of love is a result of taking action. And it's as much about feeling love for myself after doing something that God wants me to do, which is to love others. And it's more about that for me than it is about what I get from the other person. So it's not the action from someone else. It's the results of the action that I take towards others.
I love that. And by the way, getting back to what I mentioned earlier, can you name a song that isn't about love? I couldn't come up with one. I'm not a big music person, so I'm not that well versed, pun intended. But if you can, you listeners out there, if you can come up with a song that's not about love, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But
There's a few.
even the Itsy Bitsy Spider is all about love. So what did you come up with? And I'm going to ask you, even if you have an answer, is there passion and emotion involved in some way? Because I couldn't come up with one that I could walk backwards to where love was at the
Was
base.
not the theme. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's so interesting. I asked, I was thinking about this as I was prepping this episode, and I asked my husband, and he immediately
Me
was
too.
like, Paradise City by Guns N' Roses. And I was like, okay. And so of course I looked at the lyrics, and when I hear the song, I don't really know what the story behind the song is, but when I hear the song, it makes me think of an addict, right? A drug addict looking for their hit, and they go to Paradise City, right?
Mhm.
That's where the drug takes them. Ironically, growing up, there was a Paradise City where I grew up. So
Mm.
that it was also very a rock and roll kind of vibe there. So I thought, well, it could be an actual place. Either way, it wasn't necessarily about love, right? It was about like the high, right, of whatever this person was singing about. I guess Axl Rose was singing about. But here's what I thought was interesting, right? Even if it is about addiction or about this town, it's still something that they love, whether
They're
it's
passionate about.
a
There's
drug or
emotion involved.
exactly. So I guess to your point, maybe we're not meant to create a song that's not about love, because if we're not feeling enough passion or emotion about something, we're not going to erupt into song.
I love it. Touche. Enough said. But yes, if someone else can convince us, I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Yes,
So,
please.
how does one show love? It's easy to show and talk about how we show up for others, but what does it look like to show love to ourselves? And if we show love to ourselves, isn't it also a way to show love to others when we are our best self? For me, making whatever is important to me a priority is a way I show love to myself. I serve my family as a means of showing love to them, and I spend time with grandkids. That may sound silly to some, but when it comes to showing love to myself, this is what it looks like: having my salads prepped and ready to go every day, even though I hate doing it. I do 10 at a time. That's showing up for myself.
Mhm.
Working out 5 or 6 times a week, even though I would happily sleep in, but that's still showing love to myself. Making sure I have a spiritual connection is showing love to myself. Going to bed early shows love to myself, and having my food planned and prepared shows love to myself. I make sure I get my nails done. That shows love to myself. I like feeling well groomed. We had, interestingly, last week we had a day trip out of town to Kansas City, and the day before I packed all my food, took my shower, did my hair, had my clothes picked out. I had done my exercise for the day I was going to miss on a previous day, so I wouldn't have any guilt about not completing my goals for that week. Please don't send me hate mail on that one. I'm not obsessed. I just have goals, and I'm
Right.
preparing for climbing a mountain here in about 6 weeks. So I have goals,
Mhm.
and I'm able to stay more relaxed and feel good about myself. So that's self love.
That's
Had
right.
my had my water bottle filled. I was ready to walk out the door on time that morning. I had our podcast ready to listen to on the drive. Along with some Netflix shows. And you know what? I felt calm all day. Rarely can I remember a day of calm like that I could compare it to, especially traveling. It was pure joy. It was blissful to be relaxed. I wasn't worried about food. I wasn't in a food panic or craving all day. Even when I had to go into highly triggering store to buy my husband his drug of choice for lunch, I was fine. I focused on the cute dish towels that they were selling and stuck with my commitment to myself. I just did not focus on the food. I was there picking up someone for something else, totally separate from who I am.
Mhm.
So I didn't get a nap that day, and I was fine. I had a chance to talk to you for a little bit. That made it great.
Mhm.
And I made sure I had enough sleep the night before. But lastly, by showing love to myself, don't you think it showed love to my husband? That way he was not with a grumpy Gus who
That's
was
right.
an unhinged psycho all day long. So self-care is not selfish. It's a process that takes care of everyone in the room. I mean, I really feel that if I'm taking care of myself, everyone in the room is going to benefit. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Um, I love that, you reframe it that way, right? Showing love to yourself allows you to show love to others, and
Yeah.
instead of what happens if you don't take care of yourself first, you can be, and that's something that I just was experiencing yesterday. I was super overwhelmed yesterday, and I noticed that I was just a grump, and my husband came home from work, and I had to really try hard not to be grumpy. And I was praying for help. I was removing myself from situations. I was biting my tongue. And it worked, right? I did fine. But man, it was hard because I was in a place where I was feeling totally cashed with a bunch of things that were piling up that day and things that were on my mind. And none of it I could do anything about, but I still had to process the emotion. So,
Mhm.
until I had time to process the emotion, which I finally got last night, I was just really irritable. And so, but growing up for me, I thought love was about who controlled the other person. I thought that control was love.
Interesting.
Because control or love always came from a place of fear, fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, fear. That was just the name of the game in the family, my family of origin, at least in my nuclear family. I did not learn that love is unconditional until after my first divorce, well, my only divorce, thank God. But after my first marriage ended, because I realized, that was a very conditional marriage. My ex was very fond of saying, don't worry if things don't work out, we'll just get a divorce. I'm just like, what? So it set me up for this, like, well, you're disposable. And when I didn't really understand that, after growing up the way I did, where love was conditional and there's a lot of judgment and a lot of fear and a lot of control and a lot of manipulation and a lot of psychological and verbal abuse. I really didn't understand that love could be conditional until I understood that I didn't have to live a certain way or look a certain way or act a certain way to get love from family, friends, or others. And that really, it's the same way, a love could be the same way that I understood God loving me, which, by the way, I never understood until I was in my 40s. I did not understand that I am worthy and lovable just because I'm literally still on this planet.
Mhm.
I'm born, I'm here, and as long as I'm here, I am meant to be here, filled with love and filled with worth, because I am taking up space on this planet. And that was something that was totally foreign to me. I had no idea. And for me to show love, I needed to love myself completely first, which is something I really struggled with. I used to say, back in 2015, when I had 15 seconds of fame, that would be interviewed about my weight loss, of course. And I would just tell them that it really wasn't a journey about weight loss. It was a journey, into loving myself, which is ironic because I really still didn't love myself. I had no idea what it
Mhm.
meant.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, I need to love myself completely. Otherwise, anything that I'm doing under the guise of love is really just manipulation in an attempt to get love or get acceptance or get validation. It's not really love for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm so glad you're in this place now, and I really appreciate that you're able to articulate that so well. And here's why. Because whenever you articulate it well, it helps others understand and helps them move
Yeah,
in their journey too. So thank you for sharing all
sure.
that, those tender parts. So where does love fit into our recovery? So for me, I understand that in order to recover fully, I need to make it a priority.
Mhm.
I need to be a priority enough so that keeping myself safe is my first priority. It's my job. No one else is coming to save me.
Nope.
I am important. I deserve freedom from food. I have to love myself enough to make sacrifices necessary to have this big, beautiful life I was meant to have. It wasn't that I didn't think that I was worth it before. I just didn't understand how to get there,
Right.
nor did I understand the science behind what was happening in the brain. I loved myself enough to keep looking and searching for answers to why I kept having these uncontrollable binges a couple times a month. It's a dark, scary place,
Mhm.
completely out of control. So good on me. I heard someone mention the other day, they were sharing an affirmation about, I'm going to not say this right, but the gist was that she wanted to get out of this substance so she could have a sustainable life. And I
Okay.
thought that was a really good way of showing love to herself, of recognizing that connection between substance and a substantial life. What about you?
Yeah. For me, love is what recovery is all about. Self-love, loving others, loving God, letting God love us. Recovery for me is another word for love. It means, recovering our spiritual connection. It
Oh,
means
good.
recovering our connection to self and our connection to others. It's doing what we were put here to do, which is to show love for others and to let the, universe's love flow through us. That is what, when I talk about in recovery, or what I'm recovering my true life, my true goals in life.
That's
And
so
that
cool.
is that is, allowing the universe's love to show through me to others.
I have never heard it that way, but man, that just hit me in the chest when you said recovery is recovering the connection
Mhm.
to, and then you fill in the blank because we know that connection is the opposite of addiction or the antidote for addiction. So I love how you just drew that visual for me. So true. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, so when you show up for yourself, we're talking about that a lot. How does it make you feel? Does it really matter? Or are we making too big of a deal over this woo-woo showing up for yourself business? I think we all have different needs. We each have different size buckets of needs. My
Mhm.
bucket is on the smaller side, but it's still big enough that when I do all these important self-care things that I've talked about today, I feel really good inside.
Yeah,
And when I feel good, it's motivating to continue to taking care of the best self I can because I don't want to give that up. I want to protect it.
that's right.
So, nourishing myself with good, clean food is at the top of the list for me. It literally is that powerful in my life, in my bucket. It's that powerful that it's a trickle down effect from
Mhm.
clean food for me. So,
That's
why
right.
would I feel so good and want to destroy everything I've worked so hard for with processed food? For me, that sugar is my drug of choice. It robs me of happiness, my peace, my calm, my joy, and
Mm.
distracts me from the real things I love in my life.
Yeah,
It's just so important to love yourself and make yourself a priority. And when I talk about taking care of yourself, it doesn't have to be these major extremes. It can
no.
just be the basics, and the basics are enough to fill my bucket. I had heard the story recently about this woman who she was sharing with another friend about this long, beautiful marriage that her parents had had and what a great relationship they had had. And she longed to have this love story
Mhm.
in her life. And the wise person she was talking to reminded her the most important and longest love story you're going to have is the one with ourselves.
That's
So
right.
you nurture that, you groom it, you take care of it,
Mhm.
you treat it like with kid gloves. It's almost precious and
Exactly.
you just want to protect it with every fiber of your being. I was
Exactly.
struck deeply by that sentiment and realized how important loving ourselves and taking care of our needs are. What
Yeah.
do you think?
Yes, couldn't agree more. And, I really appreciate you sharing that story. Um, it's something that just reminds me, that there was many, many decades of my life that I just abandoned myself or abandoned
Mhm,
my needs or was so focused on pleasing others or getting acceptance or validation, which is another form of people pleasing, that
mhm,
I just would reject my own needs. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I would just ignore my needs. I would ignore my wants because I was raised to believe that that was selfish. That anytime I focused on me or I spoke up for my needs or I put a boundary about what I could do or what I couldn't do, I was immediately, labeled as selfish. And so I just thought, well, I don't want to be selfish. So I'm just going to people
mhm,
please. And it got to me to the point where it does, when I show up for myself now, it is everything. It's the most profound love I've ever felt, especially after all those years of abandoning myself and chasing after others who abandoned me.
mhm.
Um, I finally learned this lesson, and that's why I know that the universe had it in its plan for me to end up, in going through a divorce because it allowed me a full 6, 7 years of my life to prove to me who I was and to stand up for myself and to love me the way that I needed to be loved and to take care of me 100% of the time, instead of relying on someone else to help.
Mhm.
And I did. I unfortunately, because that's again what was modeled for me, was you couldn't get through life alone. You had to have somebody help you. You couldn't, nobody could possibly take care of all of their own life needs on their own. Somebody else had to help them. And that was just the sort of style of victimhood that was modeled for me by people close to me. And so when and by the way, if you did have to take care of your own life, you were angry about it. You were angry about it. There was no like, wow, what a joy this is. Wow, what a privilege this is.
Mhm.
Wow, I've got God guiding me, and this is amazing, and he's going to have my back. None
Mhm.
of that. There was none of those beliefs. So for me, when I stood up for myself, took care of myself, I food prepped, I ate well, I brought my food where I needed to go, I did my workouts, and I was doing it without trying to get anything, trying to manipulate life. I was just doing it because I knew what I needed to do to take care of myself. I was taking care of my finances. I was paying what I needed to pay and doing what I needed to do. And I was adulting, honestly, for the first time.
I'm so sorry.
Right? Oh no, it's true. It's great. Exactly. But I remember I was falling asleep one night, and I don't remember exactly what. I just had a conversation with someone, or I'd stood up for myself about something, and I was falling asleep, and I was right in that point, and I heard this little tiny voice inside say, "I love you."
Oh,
And I'm positive it was my little inner child that was just like, "Hey, thanks. Like, I see you doing all this stuff, and I love you, and I feel safe here." And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful feeling. And I at first thought it was maybe the universe, or maybe it was God's voice, but it was a little child's voice. And I thought it
that's
was so cool because she was finally feeling like someone was loving her the right way.
that's so beautiful. I'm so glad you shared that. And when
Mm.
you were talking about how people pleasing was a main motivator for you early on, don't
Mhm.
you find that when that's your main focus, it breeds resentment?
Absolutely. Because I'm doing something to get something in return. And sometimes
Yeah.
I don't even know I'm doing it. I don't even
Mhm.
know that I have an unconscious expectation.
Yeah. There's only one place where people pleasing can go, and it ain't good.
Is
It's
never.
not.
But when that was what was modeled for you
Mhm.
and taught to you,
Mhm.
and you were punished if you didn't do it,
Mhm.
that's what you think life is.
Right.
Get things.
I hope somebody's out there listening to that story you just told. I hope that that really has helped someone move along in their
Yeah,
thinking.
me
Thank you,
too.
Jamie.
Sure.
So have you heard of the five love languages? I just know you have.
Yes.
So it's gifts, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and quality time. For those of you that are out there and you want to drop a comment and what is your love language, I'm going to
Yeah.
read them one more time in case
The
you didn't
top
hear it.
two. Yep.
Gifts, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and quality time. I really am so interested when people answer this question. I really am interested in what people have to say. I really dig on acts of service. My husband put the clean sheets back on the bed the other day, and I thought to myself, I could marry him all over right
Yep.
now.
Yep. Yep.
That was big for me. Just anything you can do to lift a burden of time, basically, is always greatly appreciated by me. I don't really care about gifts. That I don't want flowers. I that's something funny about me. They just die. They're expensive, so I don't really care about flowers for my birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day. All I want is Kroger gift cards. That I love those. They speak to my soul because I buy so many groceries and I'm all about food and groceries. So it's by far my favorite gift. I'm giddy when I receive them.
Yeah.
So
I get
if anybody out there wants to send me Kroger's gift card, go ahead. I'll be the
it.
happiest girl in the world.
That's
What are you,
hilarious.
what's your love language, Jamie?
So acts of service. What's your second love language?
I don't have a second. I don't. I mean, meh. I
It sounds like it's gifts. It's the type of gift that matters to you.
okay. Gifts. I'm going
Yeah.
with gifts. And again, if anybody out there wants to send me Kroger gift cards, it's
Yeah.
okay.
That's absolutely. So we all have, I teach the love languages as part of my coaching work. And I do it in corporate America. I do it in my personal coaching. I do it all over the place. I've done it in major relationships. And I have to say, I have to give him credit. My ex-husband was the first person who brought this to me years and years ago. But my five love language, because my childhood was what it was, my five love languages, usually there's two, right? There's top two. I have actually have a top four because I was so not loved. I felt
Hungry. You
feel
were
right. I was
hungry
hungry
for
for
love.
love. And yes, I was. And so yeah, my top two of those four right there. I mean, they're actually tied within like a point of each other. But
Mhm.
my top two are quality time, words of affirmation, and that acts of service kind of does come up a lot. And it's so interesting because, when I have to remember that love languages are two-sided. So it's not only how we want to receive love, it's also how we give love. And
Mhm.
many times how we give love is how we want to receive it. So
Mhm.
my husband and
Mhm.
current husband and I got married. I spent weeks creating this card deck with pictures, and on the back of the card was all of these quotes from text messages and emails and cards we'd written. And
Oh,
weeks creating this was like a keepsake box, and like all like documenting our courtship.
mhm.
And it was beautiful, and it was so many hours spent, but it was like the biggest act of love, right? Because it was words of affirmation, it was an act of service, it was all of my time. It was like, this is an expression of my love. And I remember my husband, he saw it, he's like, this is awesome. And then I don't think he ever really read it. And to this day now he'll go and open it, and he'll like leave
Oh,
it
that's nice.
around the house, and he writes me beautiful notes every day. But it took him
Oh,
a long time to realize that my love language was words. Now for him though, it's acts of service. That's how he loves to love. So for me, if I wasn't hearing the word or words, I was just like, you don't love me. But then the man would take my car and get it, he would get it serviced and bring it back for me,
wow.
to fix our heater and air conditioner and refrigerator. I mean, he was fixing everything. He was doing everything, washing and vacuuming my car and
Oh
cleaning
my
stuff up in the
gosh.
house. I mean, he changes the sheets without even me saying anything. Like, he does all these acts of service. And I absolutely appreciate them. I really truly do. But it doesn't ring my bell like a handwritten note about how much he loves me.
You
Isn't it
should
so?
rent, yeah, you should rent him out.
I know. He really is. He's
There,
yeah. But
that's amazing.
PS, he did buy me flowers last week. Total surprise. They were stunning and
Oh,
gorgeous, but they're already dead. And I feel so bad because when I saw them, they were gorgeous. These big fuchsia roses, and they were all
oh,
open.
wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. And then the first thought I had was, they're all open, and they're only going to last about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
I didn't say a
Mhm.
word. I'm just like, I love them. They're so beautiful. And he doesn't buy roses. He didn't know that you're supposed to buy them closed. And anyway, but I didn't say a word. I thought my act of love is not saying a word. It's just every time I see those flowers, how beautiful they are. I mean, we had like air
Absolutely.
conditioner guys in the house yesterday. I'm like, guys, did you see my roses? Like, because I
Yeah,
wanted everyone to know.
yeah, yeah, lady. Yeah, sure. We love your
Yeah,
roses.
whatever. I'm here to fix something. Go away.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
why do you
long
think
answer.
it's the most important act of love is the one that you show for yourself? Why do you think that's the most important? Jamie, do you want to answer that?
Um, so the most important for me is probably because that's what I'm hoping to get back. Right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe, or I'm trying to sort of self-seek. And I don't think it's conscious. I think it's probably subconscious, but I think that's why. And for me, because it's the currency that I think of when I think of how much I love someone, I tell them, or
Mm-hmm.
I put it in words, or I take a moment to reach out to them or call them or talk to them and tell them like what I think of them and how deeply they are impacting me. So I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like that to me is the way to love, because it's something that it's my currency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, my most important act of love that I show myself, don't laugh, but food prep is by far the most loving, caring, protecting thing I do for myself. It reaps the biggest rewards of anything else I do And then, as I mentioned before, it's a trickling effect, but that is the biggest act of love that I show myself. It's that, guys, I know it sounds small, but that is the biggest,
Mhm.
most important thing that I do to keep myself the best in every single other area, because once
Yeah.
I go off the rails with the food, I mean, it's just a downhill spiral, and
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
interested in a downhill spiral. I want to lead this, like I said earlier about my friend saying she wants to be off substances so she can have this substantial life.
Yes.
That's what I want to do.
Well, and
And
that's why it's the trunk of our recovery tree,
mhm.
most important branch.
Any other acts of love that you show that are
Yeah.
important to yourself?
Speak after years of abandoning myself and being abandoned. I never really knew what it was like to stand up or speak up for my needs. So now speaking up for my needs in recovery and speaking up with my inner family, like getting in, and I mean going in deep with my inner child and my inner teen and my inner critical parent and all of these versions of me that are in there, prioritizing my time and tasks to support my food needs and recovery needs is the, to your point, Paige, the most loving thing that I can do for
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
We do want to just jump back to one, you, Paige, you asked, there was a question about, do you have any examples of people you admire who taught you about love? Do you want to share anything there, Paige? Love and
Oh,
self-care?
yeah, probably not in a strong sense. Both my parents were very hard workers that grew up on farms. There was not a lot of focus on self-care at that time. It was more about, I mean, can you imagine in the 40s, 50s getting the job done and
Right.
surviving
Right.
out there on the farm in the middle of central Illinois? This was really something that I had to come to learn on my own. But they weren't gregarious in the typical loving way. I think their love language was working hard and
Work.
supporting
Yeah.
the family. But something that I do love about my parents is that they did take the time in their adulthood. They both learned to play tennis. They were both really good. My dad is a golfer and both very active at 82. So I admire that about their self care, their activity, especially as they age. What about you?
Yeah. I had, unfortunately too many examples of how to not show love,
Mhm.
but not too many of how to love in examples. Uh, but I would say that my grandfather, growing up, my mom's father showed me unconditional love, and that was really beautiful. My dad's mom was also, I was the first girl born after she herself had three boys. I was the first granddaughter. So she was over the moon excited about having a granddaughter. And that was a lot of love and a lot of attention, which was wonderful. My husband now shows me unconditional love in many ways, and I really appreciate that. And I would say my brother also. My brother
Oh,
and I are very
nice.
close. He loves me unconditionally, and even through the hard stuff and through the period of time where he was deep in his food addiction himself, and now he's on a healthy path, which is amazing. And I was going through my food addiction period, and we would kind of question each other or be confused in certain ways about what the other person was doing, but we never stopped loving each other and we never stopped being connected. He's been a wonderful source of support after losing our mom suddenly. He's been a great source of support dealing with my dad and all of the things we're dealing with there. And he's just my longest friend, my longest
Ah,
friend.
I love that.
Yeah, he's
Thank
wonderful.
you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do you think the value you've placed on self love, self care, as well as love and connection to others has changed over the years as you've matured?
Yes, absolutely. I realize now it's what I'm here to do.
Mm-hmm.
And PS, not expect anything in return, which
Yes.
is the trick, right?
Right. Right. I think, for me too, as I've matured, relationships have become more important. And I
Mm,
understand the value of myself and self care way more than I did when I was younger.
yeah.
Great topics. I think this is really interesting stuff. So, we wanted to end with a love lightning round.
Yeah, I love it.
And if you guys want to put your answers in the comments, feel free to play along with us too. This is going to be kind of fun. So I'm just going to rattle off these questions really fast, and we're just going to give these brief answers. So, would you
Okay.
rather acquire material things or experiences?
Experiences.
Me too. Experiences. What is your best character trait?
I have a lot of empathy for others.
I'm very tender-hearted.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself to be a pessimist or an optimist?
I'm a cockeyed optimist who's really trying not to be a pessimist.
Me too. I'm a pessimist that believes eventually everything's going to work out.
Yep.
uh, when were you the most proud of yourself? I will say that I have done that when I've done noble things when no one's looking, that's
Mhm.
when I think I have the most self pride and inner contentment. And that and my math minor, saying that I got all the way through calculus 3, whenever I can fit that into a dinner party conversation, I make sure everyone in the room knows. So I made it
As you
through
should,
calc 3.
as you should, as you should. It's coming from the girl who would break out in cold sweats during calculus 1 or accounting. Yeah, it's a miracle I got my MBA. It's a miracle.
What about you?
Whenever I put some work into something, like long-term work, and I get
Yeah.
better and I refine myself, or God
Mhm.
refines me, and then God notices it, not people. God notices it
Mhm.
and blesses me with a huge, big, oh my gosh, like waterfall of blessings that I know could only be of him. That's
Mhm.
really when I'm very proud.
The last one, do you put as much emphasis on inner beauty as you do outer beauty? This has definitely changed for me from my late teens and 20s till now, almost at 60. While I do want to take good care of myself, my emphasis has shifted to greater concern for my inner self. What
Mhm.
about you?
Yeah, I will say for me, I've been on both sides of the coin. I don't mean to say that I'm beautiful outside necessarily, but I do look very different than I used to look. And so I've been on both sides. And I will say the inner beauty is actually more important, because my outer beauty really is just a reflection of my inner beauty.
Mhm. Well said. Great, great statement to end our segment about love on. We've got 2 listener questions. Jamie, do you want to take the first or second one? I'm happy to do
Yeah,
either
I'll jump in. My family has
one.
lots of get-togethers, but I really prefer my alone time. I get it. Is there something wrong with me? No, that's your wiring.
Okay.
We have introverts and extroverts, and what they call
Mhm.
ambiverts that tend to vacillate between the two.
Mhm.
Introversion, extroversion, ambiversion, they're all okay. They're all acceptable of this world. So really it comes down to knowing yourself, listening to yourself. Maybe a balanced mix is good for you, because you can have that connection with others and then a connection with yourself. And you can think about, okay, if I'm going to go to this party or this family get together, what's my goal today? What am I giving? What am I going there to do? What am I going there to see, or to learn, or to realize, or to contribute? And look at it that way. And I come from, on my ex's side, a family that had get-togethers all the time, a lot of family get-togethers. And because they were so food heavy and processed food heavy and focused all around the processed food, I found myself, as I began to recover, not wanting to go to them all.
Right.
As much as I loved the family deeply,
Mhm.
it was too hard to do it around the food. And they thought it was, about them. They thought it was me pulling away from the people, and it wasn't that at all. It was me not being able to be around the food without going headfirst into it
Mhm.
early in my recovery. And so, um, there's nothing wrong with taking that time for yourself and just saying, I've got plans today. I'll see you next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of maybe every other party,
Yep.
and making sure that you've carved out enough time for yourself so that your bucket is full, your
That's right.
battery is replenished before you go into situations of giving.
Yes.
I think it's important. I don't think it's selfish. I do think it's self-care. So, yeah,
Agreed.
there's a way to totter. It's not just a all or nothing. I think there's a happy
Absolutely.
medium in there. Okay, we've
Absolutely.
got one more.
Yeah.
I want to do more self care, but I am so stressed out from work, taking care of my family, and lack of sleep that there is just no time for me in the day or for anything extra. So, this is a hot topic for a lot of people. Um, Jamie and I think maybe have different answers. So I'm going to start with mine and I'm going to let her pipe in. But I suggest always start with sleep. I think it has to. be considered like a doctor's order that you get at least 8 hours a night, and then we start working on everything else after you're well rested. I guarantee you, your outlook on life from a tired position versus an outlook on a rested position is completely different. Your capabilities are completely different. Once you're rested, you're able to, I always say, as long as I'm rested and have an empty bladder, I can take on anything that lies in front of me. So those two needs, once they're met, I mean, I
Empty
am
bladder.
on fire. So making sure that you're well rested is, your sleep hygiene, I think, is a top priority.
Yeah.
I find without my sleep, everything else falls apart. So it's right next to food prep in order of importance. It's that essential to me. What do you have to say?
For me, it's, I want to be careful here because I did not raise children of my own. But I was certainly around a lot of nieces and nephews in my day, and young kids. And I saw the struggle the parents had figuring out how to prioritize sleep and work and life and children and the children's needs. And I saw how sleep was compromised. So I totally get it. And I have a lot of sympathy for you. But really it comes down to, it's not a time issue, it's a priority issue. And I understand if you have small children, you have to prioritize their needs because they're not capable of taking care of themselves. I get that. But there are ways for tasks to be divided. There are ways to say today is the day we do this, and today is the day we don't do that. Right. So you don't have to do everything every day. You can have certain days that you prioritize. And, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not getting up and first thing in the morning and getting my workout done, it doesn't happen.
Right.
I can't even imagine having a family and trying to get fitted in after waking up. Like, there's no way. And I know just me, living with family and being part of my husband and the life we have, there's so many things that come up in a day that we don't plan for. There's no way if we didn't work out, well, if I didn't work out first thing in the morning, that it would ever happen.
Agree.
And that's not about working out, whatever it is, food prep, meditation, stress management, an extra hour of sleep, laundry, whatever, taking care of you and making sure that you can be the best place to tackle the rest of life. That has to be prioritized. It's not a time issue.
And I'm going to jump in again. If I know I have to be up by a certain time, I make sure that I may have to adjust my bedtime.
That's right.
To make sure that I'm up early enough to accomplish what I need to get before I need to be at my first meeting or meet with my first person, whatever.
Exactly.
So adjusting my sleep schedule, my bedtime.
What's the last thing I do at night before I fall asleep? I do math in my head. I'm like, okay, if I do it, get up at my first meeting's at 8:30, and I back it up to like, okay, 5 a.m. alarm, 4:30 a.m. or whatever it is.
I think you should not sweat about math anymore. You just did an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, it really is true that I always like to say that your day starts tonight. Tonight is when you start your day for tomorrow. So totally agree.
All right.
Well,
guys.
Thank you. Yeah, love it. Thank you so much.
We will see you all on the next episode of Real Food Recovery. We're going to start having some guests with us soon. So we're very excited to start bringing some of them to you. And if you have a story to tell about how you are learning anything about recovery from our podcast or on your own journey of recovery from processed foods and food obsession, reach out to us. Let us know. We'd love to talk to you and maybe have you as a guest on Real Food Recovery. So again, I am Jamie Reno. And
Paige Alexander.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you soon on Real Food Recovery. Take care.
Bye-bye.